This is No Expectations, the podcast where we have unedited, lively conversations about spirituality, Zen Buddhism, holistic living, and everything in between. Well, it's a special day here at No Expectations. We have a very, very important guest, a person that I met recently and I instantly became buddies with. Heidi Rendina, how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jen.
Welcome.
Yes.
Heidi and I met in a wellness, health and wellness coaching program, and we just kind of, I guess, how would you say, just kind of clicked?
Well, we kind of clicked, Andrew, because you brought into the first session some sense of humor,
Who would have
and
known?
I absolutely loved it because the truth is I've been doing this a minute now. Thanks be to God or the opportunity to be here. And my one son, my youngest son, Jake, actually used the line that you use in our first coaching session. Hi, I'm Andrew, and I just can't stop eating cake, and I just started rolling. So it's not too far off, to be quite honest.
Right. I think what I said was onions, actually. I said
Oh,
onions. I
it
can't
was.
stop eating onions.
It was onions.
It was onions. I mean, cake, I think, is a relatable problem. Like, I can't stop eating cake, but
It
if you're
was
suffering
onions.
from onion eating addiction, like, you've got some things. And
Yeah,
so,
and then it was an onion eating addiction. But at that point, I think we evolved to like it doesn't matter. Anything could be an addiction.
right. We were just experimenting with that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's how Heidi and I met and just started having a conversation and just kind of understanding your journey. So before we jump too far in, Heidi, tell me a little bit about you, where you are, what you're doing, and all of that, if you don't mind.
absolutely, Andrew. Let's see. I'm here in Montana, in the eastern part of the section of the state currently. I'm born and raised here in Montana. I'm fifth generation. I have raised. I'm 51, and over that time, I've been married 25 years and raised up three awesome humans. And currently, they're all launching 28, 24, and 21. And my company is called Fierce Grace Wellness, a cell to soul practice. And my purpose and intention with this company is to empower humans with a path to empowerment, to help them in all things that humans can lean into holistically, as far as in health and wellness coaching, personal training, and nutrition. And those were my modalities that I come to team humans with, to help them to not just survive but to thrive and to be optimized. I don't think anybody wants to be ever a man, woman, or child so frustrated and like, I just can't get this. And I think that there is such power in the positive psychology of health and wellness coaching. It's a place that our world needs. It helped me tremendously. And so I'm here to bring this modality, this profession, to the world and to spread it out there. That's what I'm doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so you say like health and wellness coaching helped you get somewhere.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, you
absolutely.
seem like you're in pretty good shape and you've been doing all the things, but like, what has health and wellness coaching done for you?
Thanks, Andrew. That's a great question. What health and wellness coaching, did for me was at a point in my life. Yeah, definitely it could grind hardcore on like, exercise. But the person that I was, let's say like even 10 years ago or most of my life, approached maybe exercise or food in a way that was disordered.
Mm,
And I didn't know that at the time, but I knew that I was feeling something off. I knew that I felt like I was always trying to make myself be something different than what I was. And I felt pain in most aspects of my being every day since I could remember. So I utilized exercise, food, in a way to control what I felt was uh, outside of my control. So what was outside of my control? People, places, things, um, my family, what was raising me, how I could control myself in that was through those modalities, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And I did see in my upraising that exercise was a way for sure to it made some sense with especially my dad. He was a logger,
Mm.
and he taught me a lot of really great things with strength training and exercise and the mindset and the mentality. Like no matter what, you still need to take care of yourself and exercise. And I love that about um, him because I saw the positive in that. Like no matter where we went, we could be in buttfuck Egypt, and my dad would go find a hole in the wall gym and go take care of himself, and I'd
Hmm.
follow him. Or so then that was part of me. Like no matter where I went, if there wasn't a gym, I was on the floor doing some push-ups or some planks or some stretching. A few jumping jacks or maybe some lunges. Just something to move the body, which for me then produced this place of feeling better. Like I felt good. Like
Hmm.
oh, like okay, I'm here. Like I'm here.
All those
Yeah,
chemicals got kicked
yeah.
in, and you're like,
Like
yeah, this feels good, right?
yeah,
So you
right.
kind
Absolutely.
of
I knew that was a good drug.
right.
Like I maybe at some points in my life couldn't articulate what was happening, dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, but I knew that if I touched him with my physical being, then I could connect with myself. And I was like, all right, I got this day. I felt more in control. So, anyways, so health and wellness coaching at then the point where I was able to open up a health and wellness manual by Well Coaches, Margaret Moore. She had a company,
Hmm.
has a company, Well Coaches, that I opened up maybe, I don't know, 9, 10 years ago. And I was working at a medical fitness facility and I started reading through the manual and I was like, wow, what is this? Like, it was so like empowering. And the language was the opposite of the language that I had in my head about how I would, the taskmaster, like, yo, bitch, run faster. Like,
Right.
what the fuck?
Self-flagellation.
Right. Yeah. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, get your shit together. That was the voice in my head. Like, don't eat that. Work out harder. And instead, the voice in this manual was like, hey, you're doing great. Talk about your wins. And yeah, you can totally do that. Let's talk about ways we can think about doing that and strategize that. I was like, that sounds nice. I
Jen,
like
have
that.
you? I've known Jen for a long time. I think Jen, and I've suffered that myself. Jen, can you kind of like feel that same feeling of like
Absolutely.
getting something out of it?
The way we talk to ourselves and the way we push our bodies to do things, to whether it's to meet this idea of physical body and the way you look and the way you eat, or yeah, self talk is or the voice that's like deep down inside of your head is a hard
Yeah.
one to acknowledge and then to correct.
Yeah.
Do we? I mean, do we think this is a modern condition that we've done to ourselves as a society? I mean, I think we're all around the same generation. I'm 128. You ladies are much younger. I have a very strict lotion routine, so I'm able to keep this
You're like
to a
a
minimum.
Galapagos turtle.
I
Tortoise.
don't move that slow, but I mean, I appreciate that.
It's
But do we
goofy.
think this is a modern problem? Like
I
this
ask my,
idea of the
I ask
self-talk?
myself that question often in different ways. I actually like visualize what the human body looked like in the Renaissance time. And I'm like, right? Like that what women look like now and what we put the sculpting aesthetically of our bodies now is not what was then. And I know the pioneers, they probably had bodies that were so durable. Like it wasn't these like shoulder caps and glutes that are like wow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not so much the physical characteristics. Have we done this to ourselves? Maybe because, and I'm just riffing right here. If we become so far detached from that life of being like life being short, being connected, like there was no farmer, the fifth generation that hit Montana for you, I'm sure that was out like, let me go lift some weights to make sure my pecs are in order, right?
Yeah,
They were out like doing what they needed to do, rinse and repeat 7 days a week. And so there was no time to sit and go, God,
yeah,
my shoulders look bad, or like,
yeah.
was there time for this negative self talk? I guess that's my question. And as we've advanced as a civilization, or I'd like to think we've advanced, and technology comes into our lives and life becomes a little simpler, have we given ourselves this time to think about stuff that probably even my father or my grandfather didn't think about because they didn't have that luxury.
Well, I mean, like, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we're looking at the magazines and we're trying to get this ideal look that has been for men's pleasure, women. No offense to you, Andrew. But yeah, like I think we've evolved into. I think a lot has to do with the patriarchy, but that's another subject for a whole different timeline. Um, it seems worse now because we're constantly looking at images of other people with my kid on our phones and our devices, and whether TV, wherever we're getting images of other people and who we're idolizing, who we're putting in front of us. It's a lot different and more in our faces today than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
Yeah. And so like maybe yes, it is more prevalent, now in modern times, but I do think if we look like through history, even like the stories in the Bible, I think that critical inner voice has always been there in the human um, existence. That critical inner voice of you can do more, you should be more, or something that is of a nature of like worry, anger, something that's not enough,
That's
frenzy, panic.
that's in my opinion, based my love of history is the byproduct of a stable society. Like to be around, to sit around and think about things in a philosophical way, to be introverted, to have existential threats. Like that only comes about by being stable.
Yeah,
Like when society was running around chasing food and like living hand to mouth day to day, you're not thinking about your place in the universe in the same way that you consider like when you've got stability and you've got walls around your kingdom and you've got food every day, then you're like, what's my place in the universe and who am I and all of those things.
yeah,
And I think we're very stable, and I'm grateful for all of that. And I think those are things that we need to do to enrich ourselves uh, holistically. I think it's important for us to know our place in the universe, and
mm,
like no expectations being kind of the podcast being about spirituality. Talk to me about how you work with your clients in a spiritual way, because you talked to me about health and wellness, the physical connection, the
yeah.
nutrition. Those are a lot of external components. How do you connect with your clients that assume are varied and find what works for them spiritually and whatever that
Absolutely.
means to you?
That's a great question. Absolutely. So how to connect with that? Well, spirit, some connection with our spirit. Like we when even you talked about, your take on spiritual. At least you have something. There is something that's even part of our whole wellness that we can see as human beings, that spiritual, that soul part of us. Yeah. So if a client doesn't have that like awareness, then we can talk about that awareness, like nurture it, like even show through the modalities of health and wellness, because it's even on the intake, like what's your practice for spirituality. Like there's an open-ended question, like how do you connect spiritually. That's part of our human being. So yeah, it's definitely on the table. And then talking about, because here's the thing, a lot of the times humans may want to lose 20 pounds, or to get in shape. But if they're not in a practice of connecting to something that is greater than themselves, there's a disconnect. And no matter what we do, it's, to me, my understanding is like it can just not really work out so well, because there's too much extrinsic motivation going on here to just look good for a certain way. And internally, especially for females and males, it usually ends up on the other side exploding out in a really hard way. Like it doesn't really work out that way. There's got to be some connection.
Yeah, that's sometimes that takes time. My experience as a
Yeah.
yoga teacher for many, many years was like everyone finds their way into it differently. Like I just want to show up for the physical part of it, and then maybe that's all they want to do. They want to be able to, change their body or be calm or
Yeah.
whatever. And then along the way, something changes for them and they find the other components, or they may not.
True.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I think that's the thing is as spiritual people or coaches or connect that we're trying to connect with other human beings and help them. is to give them that space for longevity, to be able to
Mhm.
find those things when they arrive,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And we don't know what
Absolutely.
that tail is for everybody. It's different.
It is. You're right. There's well, and you and I, Andrew, we get educated on the stages of change, right? So there's that. But, however, whatever, which we don't like to use those words, if a person is continually hitting their head against the wall and they are bruised and they are battered and the pain is finally getting great enough, we're going to need to have this conversation. Like, it takes what it takes usually for people to change, on a greater grand level. So, I mean, there's that piece in there that we kind of come in. Usually, if they get, my experience is like get beat up enough with their own ego, our own egos. There's a place then like, all right, I'm willing, man. I'm willing to look at something else here because what I'm doing, my thoughts, my behaviors, my ways of being they're not producing what I'm looking for. In fact, I don't like how I feel right now. So let's look at something. Let's look at something else. And there's that piece where we can talk about spirituality, of that higher power, or the modalities of touching in with our soul, our peace, or the concept of soul. Like even saying to someone, "How do you feel about this statement?" We are we are souls here having a human experience. Even saying something like that to them and say, How do you feel about that?" And maybe it's deer in the headlights, but maybe it's like, huh, I don't know, just having conversations that might open up.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Jen, what's your experience? I mean, I know I've seen you go through a transformation. What was that? Can you maybe give us an idea of what that was for you, that change?
Yeah, I think it required me, and I've seen a lot of people in the similar situations, and we've talked about it here on the podcast before, is arriving at a space of vulnerability where you are asking for help. And being at the right place at the right time for me was Andrew was also at the right place at the right time through a yoga asana class. And it was very important, I think, for me to have a teacher, someone who could lead me through, a coach, a support group of someone who could kind of lead you through the vulnerable and the raw and spaces. Because at the end of it, if we're having this human experience, we're trying to, come to terms with a lot of the pain, the things that are causing us to do the things we're doing. However, we're hurting our body or hurting our mind. So my experience was I would not have gone through the hardest part of my spiritual journey, which was healing, without a support system,
Yeah.
who for me was Andrew. And, I've been able to be that person for some people along the way. And, I've seen other people in kind of like what you're doing, Heidi, is helping people through the hard parts so they can then take care of themselves.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think the key, not to interrupt, but I think the key for all of this, regardless of spirituality or any journey to change, is surrender of some sort.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
you gotta like trust whatever you're in. You've got to trust the person that's helping you. You've got to trust the
Mhm.
system. You've got to trust yourself,
Yes.
and that takes the word that we talk about a lot on this podcast that you mentioned earlier, Heidi, is ego.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I
Which
mean,
could be like an insidious parasite that just wants to come in and take you over
I
with
mean,
fear, with fear.
right? It's required to live a human life, in my opinion. Like
Yeah,
your ego, it doesn't serve. It's not completely sadistic. It does like say, "Hey, get out of bed. It's time to get up and brush your
yeah,
teeth," and
yeah,
it does require all of those things, right? So it does push you, but then sometimes for a lot of people, including myself, it's hit the gas too hard,
yes,
and
yeah.
it pushes you into spaces that don't work.
Nope.
And the only way we've talked about it here is to recognize when that's happening
Yeah.
and learn to catch it before it hits the accelerator pedal and you end up in the wall.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that takes practice and that takes awareness and that takes a whole lot of mindfulness. And the only way that comes along is through time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And what we
Yeah.
talk about here is like knowledge is one thing, but wisdom is a different thing. And the only way to get to wisdom from knowledge is time and experience.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
giving yourself that space to fall down on your face, get back up, fall down on your face again, get back, and like that constant thing, and to see what happens.
Yeah.
But the key is surrender. And for Jen, I mean, I know, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jen. I was a witness to that surrender, and that
Awesome.
was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was scary because I've been there too.
And I
It's
think that had we not, for me personally, not have someone there, a trusted resource to kind of guide you through those spaces, it would have been easy for me to give up and just continue to fall back what was comfortable, which was the unhealthy habits I was living and the space where
Hmm.
it was causing harm, but it was comfortable in that space. So having leaders and coaches and support people who you trust to pull you through it is, I think, very
Yeah.
important.
so Heidi, when you get people to come to work with you,
Yes.
is perfection a thing for a lot of people?
Yes, Andrew. Thank you for asking that question.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It is the 10 bazillion pound gorilla on their fucking back. And then we get to go to work and we get to roll up our sleeves and have that conversation. Like it's progress, not perfection. And perfectionism is usually a byproduct of this hypervigilance to stay safe. And if I can only just do it right. And then what happens most is you can see this formula that has been created by the delusion of perfectionism is if I didn't do it right this way, fuck it mentality. And then the self sabotaging ways of being, right? We've all done it. We've all done it. But then that level of you're talking about is like catching ourselves in that moment. Oh shit, I'm doing this again. I am talking this way to myself. I'm behaving this way. I set out to do X, Y, and Z, 75 hard. Okay, whatever. You get to day 22 and you're a piece of shit. No, you're not.
Right.
How?
But
What
that
the
ego
hell?
is just, yeah. I mean, ego is
And
part of
then
that
you
perfectionism
go,
thing,
you
right?
go eat onions or cake and
Yeah.
say, fuck it. And then
How dare you?
blah, 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 blah. Okay, no. Like we are homeostasis as the pendulum swings. We're supposed to be right here, right here, like you talked about. This place of peace and calm and serenity, is where we can be more of use to the world. And yes, we have to take care of ourselves, but it's within some balance, which is, anyways. So, perfectionism every day is a conversation that it's a place when we're peeling back some of those layers of the onion. And that's a key issue because I don't, the client comes to town and it might take 1, 2, 3 sessions. It could take 12 to get to that place. But
Hmm.
no matter what, we're getting there. We're getting there. And perfectionism is a killer. It's delusional. My therapist used to say, Heidi, you can't peel back the blanket of, well, she said this, you can't peel back the blanket of denial because they'll die of exposure.
Right.
So you just got to give it some time, like you've talked
Yeah.
about, Andrew and Jen. Like we just got to give each person their own space to evolve, and sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. And I've been doing this a minute. I've seen a lot of different ways that people cope. With food, alcohol, gambling, drugs. What blah 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 blah. People shopping. There's ways. Going too far with the
Right.
workouts and in the diet and the macros. Most people are not eating. I mean, if we're getting in there, think that not eating food is the goal. What?
Yeah. My opinion about that stuff is like, there's nothing worse, like, than doing something you hate doing. So if
Yeah,
if you don't like to run, then don't run, because like there's nothing worse than like, oh, but the doctor said I should go for a run every day. Well, find something else
yeah,
that's less abusive on your
yeah,
entire system.
yeah. So
Uh,
we tie all those things into our nutrition and our physical being, like all of those. So in those moments when we're talking about perfectionism, like it goes into every area, every area. Where is this seeping in? Our thought process is that we need to be perfect. It's progress, you know.
Well, my definition, like when I think about perfectionism, and then I've suffered from perfectionism and
Mhm,
surrounding that many times in my life, in all sorts of things, whether it be physical activity or the art creation or anything like that.
mhm.
I find it to be uninteresting. Like perfectionism is not, when things are perfect, they're not interesting.
Yeah,
And so, like when I think about the society we live in, where AI is like kind of doing everything for us, and it becomes like this perfect, like blah blah blah. I can sniff it out. I don't know if you ladies can sniff out something that's been created AI and it's something that's human involved. Like it's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
So what, like for me, when I see something that's broken and like or weathered, I find that very interesting and real, opposed to other times where it's like, oh, that's just so
Yeah.
it's too correct.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for us as human beings to recognize that the things that we have in our side of ourselves that aren't perfect, that are broken or fractured or mended or whatever, that's the beauty in us.
Yeah.
And like coming to terms with that, and then we can help other people find that too, find that
Absolutely.
connection to brokenness or healing or whatever that is,
Yeah.
imperfection.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I think it helps to age. Aging is a humbling process. Like
Yeah.
I'm 51 and I,
128.
what's that?
128,
Oh, he's
128.
128.
28. Like I sit there sometimes and I'm like, seriously, like, whoa, like, okay. But I'm grateful to show up daily, to take care of this meat suit, this shell that surrounds me the best that I can so that I can show up to life. I want to be able to swim in the oceans and climb those mountains. I want to get on an airplane. Those are the things that matter most to me. Yeah, I like to, and yes, there's nothing wrong with wanting to put on clothing with ease. Like, cool, that's awesome. You can have it all. I don't negate that vanity part of myself at all anymore. I think my vanity got me sober and got me to the place that I am today because it was like, girl, this is not working out. Like you gotta flip the switch here. Like, yeah. And then just like to wrap back around to what you talked about, Jen and Andrew, with surrender, like the surrender. The first step of the 12 steps is that we admitted we were powerless over blank. Our lives had become unmanageable. Boom. Step
Mhm.
one. Right. But if you listen to step one, we we admitted. It's not I. So when you talk about Jen about support, that's why I fell in love with, well, it takes what it takes. Like I was done. There was nothing left. All options were gone. I had one strand of hair left to keep this life. And I chose to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. On October 29th, 2016, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, all right, God, I literally sat there and said, can't do this anymore. That's how I said it. And I said, I did it. And I literally felt physically like I dropped in from a different place to here. And I felt like for days that turned into months and for the first year or so, like I walked on very shaky legs to do most anything human. Anything that I did when I finally surrendered was really hard. Like how to decorate a Christmas tree, how to make a cake, how to like have these confrontational conversations about sensitive subjects. Like that took years. How to stand up for myself. Andrew really said a great thing once to me already. Like I came out from underneath this no. Like you said, like I finally, or no, I think he maybe said in the way that I could say no, like no. I finally on the back of a coin, my first coin I got in New Orleans for my 1 year of sobriety, it says on the back of it, there's three things, but the one that's most important to me that I could connect with for me is to thyself be true. So, I mean, we talk about so many things already right now, like that ego tells us to be perfect. And that's a joke for our natural moral excellence of the Western world, like showing up why, how this way. So what? So to
Mhm.
be true to ourselves and to take care of ourselves is yeah, that piece that I've really been able to take into to me, into my world, and then ripple effect that into my company, Fierce Grace Wellness. Because when you're working with me, you've got something that's overcome something that kills most people,
Mhm.
the disease of addiction, and people can have conversations and say, no, it's not a disease. I would counter that. I'm going to counter it because I come from generational disease, the disease of addiction. And I've watched people blow their brains out, drive off cliffs, and,
Mhm.
they don't make it. So there's something chemically wrong there
Right.
with that. So I'm grateful to have that level of surrender and awakening so that I can live here now. So now I have access to life
Right.
and life has access to me. So, and I'm not afforded some things that a normal person's afforded. Like I don't let my serenity or my peace get too far off balance. Because if I do, then I'm in a very ill place, because my old ways of being were to have chose to drink to find relief to pain. So I stay very centered in my path of what that takes. And we only talked about one step, but there's 12 steps in this, and in
Right.
each 12 steps has like books under it. And I think it's so amazing.
Well, there's two things that came up there. I mean, there was more than two things. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Yeah,
A, like, congratulations on your sobriety.
thank you.
B, you got some real stones to show up to New Orleans sober.
I know. On Halloween, and my
Oh man,
first NFL football game, and my husband, like how he rolls, like how we met, we drank,
yeah. I mean,
how we did it. It was insane.
it's in the tap water here. So I mean, you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, I will
um,
take that one. I was
yeah.
like,
Um, but there's two other like kind of spiritual things I think that come to mind for me. It's about, we think about our lives, that we have to have somebody else in our lives, or something else needs to be part of the baked into the cake to help complete us.
yeah,
And as we go through life, but we have, if we're not friends with ourselves,
yeah,
like for the journey of our lives, then it's going to be really problematic. So we have to like learn to accept ourselves, be friends with ourselves to move forward.
yes,
And people will come and go, things will come and go, like money and relationships and all that stuff. But if deep down inside we're okay with ourselves, that helps move us along through life. And then the other thing, a quote that I always love is from the Zen Buddhist D.T. Suzaki, which said, I'm an artist at living, my work of art is my life.
absolutely. I love that.
And so
That
if
is
we're
so
not
true.
thinking about, okay, you're going to fuck up and you're going to like throw some shit against the wall that doesn't work, that doesn't like
Yeah.
complete the picture, but you can go back and paint over that.
Yeah,
But it's still there, and it's still there. I didn't paint this, but I mean, this is really horrible. But this is not my work, by the way.
It's like AI.
But my life is about as messy. It's about as messy. But we can go back and paint over it. But you know it's there. I know it's there because we've experienced it, and so it, there's no end. It continues to move
yeah,
if you allow it.
yeah.
So um,
It's yeah, that's I love that. I always have said that too. Like in recovery, I had a level now of awareness, right? Like, and the art of living well, like right, like the art, like, and that's meditative. Like taking that sip of the first morning coffee, hearing the water boil, in your moments of cleaning the house, like giving, just loving that fact that you have products that you can purchase to clean the house, in a body that can bend over and clean the floor, that is functionable, hot water, plumbing.
I mean, Jen talks about it a lot. It's about being grateful in the
Yes,
moment,
yes,
giving
every
yourself
day.
space, giving yourself the space to say thank you for that,
Thank
which a
you.
lot of times we take for granted. We all do. I
Yes.
do it too, right? This
Hmm.
this right here, this technology that we use to
Wow,
communicate over the entire country, I'm grateful for it right now.
it's amazing.
Right. Um, I know you've got a role, Heidi. Give us all your details where everybody can find you.
Yeah, I'm
Shout it
gonna take
out
time.
quick.
So you can go to www whatever fiercegracecoaching.com, fiercegracecoaching.com. Instagram is Fierce Grace Wellness.
Okay.
Um, I do a lot of my throw out shout outs to the world through Instagram. It's just it's easy. Then it goes out to Facebook. You can call me 406-261-2534. You can text me, you can email me. Yeah. So it's all there on the website. And yeah, absolutely. So I
Fantastic.
love what you also said, Andrew, about like learning to love ourselves. And that's part of the process, even too, like if wanting to lose some body fat, like I always say, like, just because we have fat doesn't mean we're fat. Like we have a toe. Just because we have a toe doesn't mean we're a toe. We're we're,
Love
we're
that.
more than that, right? Like we're more than that. Like you have to become friends with every part of ourselves. Like we are what, over 50 to 60 trillion cells. So everything is energy. And if we're hating the part of us that we don't like, we've got to make friends with that part of us, right? We've got to make friends with the part that we are just wanting so badly to change. We have to
Well,
love that part.
we can go down this road for days, but if I'm going back to cells, if I remember correctly, your body, it takes 7 years for your body to shed every cell in your body, right?
Yeah, and there is a process though, even like doing through some detox and stuff that I know that there's a turnaround in a certain part, but I think you're completely right about that. But in those cells, we are over 60% water in that one cell, right? Of those 60 trillion cells. But the thing is, when we talk to water, they've done actual
Yeah,
videos of when
right.
you talk negatively to water and when you
Yeah,
talk positively water, what it looks like.
right,
There is no getting around this. Like we have to like and love on ourselves to
right.
be that place that we're going to.
But what I was going to say is like our bodies are in constant change, but we don't even know it.
Yeah.
Right? So change is always happening, whether we want it to happen or not. So we're shedding skin cells, all these cells
Yeah.
as we go through our lives. We're changing whether we want, but we have to. There's certain things that we can actually change. We can control that change a
Hmm.
bit, right? What we want
Yes.
to do.
Yes.
So the way
Absolutely.
you see what you're talking about, the way we speak to ourselves affects us at a cellular level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because then what's happening too is we're creating new neuroplasticity it,
Right.
in that positive light because we're having to shed the negative deer
Right.
trails in our brain, right? The game trails of you're a piece of shit, you can't ever do anything right, you suck. Has to take time. And it literally, when I personally have felt that physically, when in that moment you come to that crossroads and you had a certain way of being and doing and acting and then choosing something different, it's like
Yeah.
like I'm doing something different, like so uncomfortable, but then you do it again and do it again. And in a way that, and it's in everything. Like when I talked about what it felt like physically to change everything, it just, you're creating these new tracks in your brain. And then
Right.
all of a sudden you're reformed. My therapist said to me, she was, lived a clean and sober life too. So she understood the disease and she also came from generational alcoholism, like the kind that's pretty bad, violent.
Mhm.
So she sat down and did like pen to paper, like mathematical equation. Okay, so when did you first have your first drink? Da, 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 da. She goes, okay, so it'll take 5 years. It's going to take 5 years for your brain to completely reform. And 5 years. I was like, yeah, baby.
I mean, the same thing from if a working out thing. If you sat around and
Yeah,
ate Cheetos for a decade,
yeah,
and then and Diet Cokes or whatever that was, whatever that
right.
it's gonna. And people come in like, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds in 6 months. I'm
No,
like, that's
that's
let's
going to take 5 years.
it's gonna take that's gonna take time.
Yeah,
So that's our job is whatever we're doing, whether it be helping people with health and wellness or physical or spirituality. It's like giving them that time and that space and that grace.
absolutely. Like it's going to be like a reassurance. Like it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
If you choose to make it be, okay. Like there's faith and there's action, and they make a handshake.
Right. And
Like all right,
sometimes our job is in this place is to make the introductions.
absolutely. Well,
So
isn't it
shake,
great to have somebody believe in you?
right,
I mean,
Right.
I know sometimes they're like, "Don't be a cheerleader," but isn't it kind of great to be like, "I believe in you. Like
right,
you can do this. Like I've done it. You can do it. Like you're worth it. You're worth the pain. You're worth the tears. You're worth the sweat. You've got this. You can do this. Don't give up." Most of my clients that have made some of these big changes, like 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 100 pounds. I mean, I am in awe of that. I mean, thanks be to the higher power to God, whatever. Like, I'm like, yes, they will say that they hear my voice in their head. Like, you've got this. You can do this. Don't give up. Keep
right.
trying. Yeah, this sucks right now. You can do it. I'm like, all right, then let's do it.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Let's leave it there. I want to have you back on soon. We'll talk some more.
Yay.
I want
Okay.
to. I mean, because I'm sure winter's about to hit where you are, and you're going to have nothing else to do. So I'm sure you're going to want to jump on. So
Anytime.
appreciate you. Appreciate
Yes.
you both. Let's do this again, and just keep on doing what makes you happy. Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jen, so much.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Heidi.
Take
Loved having
care.
you on.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for listening to No Expectations, the podcast. You can like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram at No Expectations, the podcast. And you can listen to our new episodes wherever you get yours.